to get started. So I really am glad that you have joined us here today. I'm going to pause for a moment. We're going to be doing interpretation. So you will be able to join the Spanish channel. We're going to turn that on in just a moment. I'll just let Emily get caught up with this.
Bienvenidos a todos. Empezamos la reunión ahora, pero primero queremos introducir la función de interpretación. Si usted necesita ese servicio, en un momentico se podrá ubicar al fondo de su ventana de Zoom y ahí haciendo clic en el icono del globo se va a conectar con la función para escoger o inglés o español. Si se está conectando con móvil, empuje los 3 puntitos, de ahí interpretación, pues su idioma preferido, pues listo o done, y ya está en la función. Si tiene cualquier pregunta, por favor, déjanos saber en el chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. So if we do have anybody with us here today who would like to be in the English channel, we do have interpretation today in both English and in Spanish. Here on the screen are the directions for joining interpretation. Until I turn it on, you will not see the globe that you happen to see here on the screen. You do need to choose a channel. So please choose either English or Spanish. So you will see that you have the option for either one of those. You will not see the interpretation until I turn it on. Because we have a few people entering, I'm going to pause for just a moment and I will repeat this for everybody. So we're just gonna, as soon as our last two folks that we see that they have audio on, we can go. So. Okay, just going to repeat myself just for the benefit of the two individuals who just came on. Today, we do have dual interpretation. So we have an English channel and a Spanish channel. You will not see the option to get into interpretation until I turn it on. But once I turn on interpretation, you are going to see this little round globe. And you will click on the globe and you will choose the language in which you would like to hear the presentation. If you happen to be on a mobile device, you will click on More. There'll be a drop down. Choose language interpretation there, please, and go ahead and choose your language. Now we'll just go ahead and share that in Spanish.
Bienvenidos. Estamos a punto de empezar la reunión y queremos introducir la función de interpretación. Cuando se enciende, usted va a notar en la barra de herramientas al fondo de su ventana de Zoom un icono de un globo. Presionando sobre el icono se va a conectar con la función de interpretación para escoger o inglés o español. Es esencial que usted escoge uno de los dos idiomas. Si se está conectando con móvil, empuje los 3 puntitos, pues interpretación y el idioma que prefiere. De ahí listo o done y ya está listo para escuchar la reunión. Si tiene cualquier dificultad, por favor, déjanos saber en el chat. Gracias.
Thank you, Emily. So I am going to turn on interpretation right now, and I ask that everyone please choose the language in which they would like to hear the presentation. And 1 second. All right, so everyone should be able to see the option. You're good there. Aaron, give me a thumbs up if you happen to see. Okay, we're good there. And we can start to get going. So just bear with me. All right. So welcome, everybody. I really appreciate you joining us here today because we have a topic that comes up many, many times with our home-based family childcare providers. Time-space is one of the most popular topics that the organization that we work for, Civitas Strategies, that we speak on. It just shows you the importance of it. So my name is Jen Vale. I am the Director of Professional Learning with Civitas Strategies. I'm joined here today with my coworkers, Annie and Aaron. Annie and Aaron are going to man the chat. So what we are asking is that if you have any questions, please either put them in the chat or you can ask them at the very end of the presentation. We are going to go and have a good Q&A session. So please, if you have any questions, they are going to get answered there. So we at Civitas Strategies are very grateful to have been invited today to present. We've been asked by the Oregon Provider Services Fund to let you know all about what is a time-space calculation, right? We need you to better understand this for tax purposes. So time-space calculation is basically allowing this. The only businesses in the United States that can use the business use of home, meaning they can expense any expense that is shared between any allowable expense shared between their childcare business and their home, is considered to be business use of home. And we have to know the time space calculation in order to do that, right? So we're very fortunate that family child care providers working out of their home have this benefit, because we know you'll have a lot of shared expenses, but it's very, very important that you understand all of the ins and outs of the time space, because we want our taxes to be as absolutely accurate as possible, right? So by joining us here today, you're going to be learning a lot about time space. Some people find it a little intimidating. The goal today is that by the end, you'll have a really good understanding about it, and you'll be able to do your own calculation. So it won't be a mystery anymore after today. So it won't feel overwhelming there, because we're going to walk you through the actual steps. We're going to go right through the process, and you'll be able to do that yourself. So before we get started, I'd just like to read our disclaimer. So the information that's contained here has been prepared by Civitas Strategies and is not intended to constitute legal, tax, or financial advice. The Civitas Strategies team has used reasonable efforts in collecting, preparing, and providing this information, but does not guarantee its accuracy, completeness, adequacy, or currency. The publication and distribution of this information is not intended to create, and receipt does not constitute an attorney-client or any other advisory relationship. Reproduction of this information is expressly prohibited. Only non-commercial uses of this work are permitted. I have seen that some of our attendees have tried to turn on the AI component because of the copyright and the intellectual property ownership of this material. We do not allow the use of AI. So you will see, if you happen to ask for it, I will have to decline that. Just letting everybody know. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? We know it's time space, but what you really need to understand is why you use time space and when do you use time space. So we're going to basically look at that, because we need to understand the importance of it and when it's applicable. We're going to discuss the one facet that you have to totally have understanding about is the difference between regular use space and exclusive use space, because without understanding how that works, you won't be able to do the time space calculations, right? So we're going to go into that in depth. We'll do some examples so that we have a really good understanding of what is regular use space and what is exclusive use space. And then, as I promised, we're going to walk through all the steps. So you're going to learn exactly how to do the calculation for time space. So it won't be, you'll be an expert, we'll put it that way, right? So there won't be a mystery surrounding time space in any way, right? So as I mentioned, as a home-based family childcare provider, many of the expenses for your business are shared between the business and your home, and the IRS acknowledges that, and you are allowed to take a portion of the expenses that are shared between your business and your home, which is called, with your taxes, the business use of home. So if you ever hear business use of home, if you ever hear someone referring to Form 8829 with your taxes, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about a place on your taxes where you enter the expenses that are shared between your business and your home. And we want you to take those expenses. You are entitled to them, right? But we need to make sure that we are taking the proper amount of the expenses and that we've gone through the process of figuring out the correct measurement and percentage for time space. So that is why we learn all about it, because we want to make sure that everything we are doing for the IRS is obviously on the up and up, that everything we are doing for the IRS is correct and exactly as it should be. And that's why one of the reasons why we just make sure that we all understand the time space calculation there. But no, what's great about it is if you stop and think about what kind of expenses are we talking about? What type of allowable expenses are um, are shared between my home and my business? You're trying to think of some of those things. Well, it can be rent, it could be utilities, it could be property tax, it could be mortgage interest. And I want you to keep that in mind, mortgage interest, not your mortgage payment. So when you think about time, space, and business use of home, if you own a home and have a mortgage, the mortgage itself would not apply, but you can use the time space calculation percentage on your mortgage interest. So if you happen to have any repairs in a space that's shared between business and home, you can use the uh, time space calculation if that is truly a space used for childcare. Maintenance for your home, again, if it's in a space used for your childcare, these are all expenses that you use the time space calculation for. So we're not referring to expenses at this particular instance for that would be 100% covered, right? So if you have all of the supplies for your childcare business, those are 100% covered. We're not talking about time space there. We are really talking about the expenses that occur within that are related to and occur within the business use of home, right? So sharing your home there. So let's just talk about what the essential concept that we do need to understand is regular use space and exclusive use space. So before we can think anything about time space, before we get into measuring and calculations and things like that, we have to have a really good understanding of what is regular use and what is exclusive use. Because once you understand the difference between those two, your time space calculation will be more accurate, and it's not difficult to determine that. You'll see that it's very easy to determine what space in my home is regular use and what space in my home is exclusive use. All right. So when we think about how does the IRS actually define regular use and exclusive use? So exclusive use is our areas that are only used for the child care. So I want you to think about that. In your home, what areas in your home have no personal use whatsoever? So you may have an area that is only used for the child care, right? But you may also have these regular use areas, and it's expected that you have regular use areas. And those are areas that are used for your business as well as for your family, right? So it doesn't have to be a space that's used all day. It doesn't have to be a space that's used every day, but it would be a space that on a regular basis, let's say once a week, an activity for the business is being conducted in one of those spaces, right? So regular use space are those spaces that are being used. They only need to be used a couple times a week. They could be used consistently every day. But when the business is not in operation, after the children go home, your family uses that space for their own it's their own use, right? The children go home and then, hey, we get our house back and we're going to be able to use everything ourselves. So we'll be able to do that. Let's just think about the difference between these two and some examples. All right. So an example of exclusive use space is if you have an area in your home that the family does not use at all. Your family doesn't, there's nobody's using it at all. In theory, they're not even really walking through it, but if they have to walk through it to get someplace, we understand. But in that space, when the childcare business is not functioning, therefore, there is no personal use whatsoever. That's exclusive use space, right? That would include if you have some closets that you only use for supplies for the business and you don't use them ever for personal supplies. That's an exclusive use space. If you had a bathroom only used by the children and never by the family, that's exclusive use space. Have an area, perhaps families enter and drop off the children in an area that's only for the business, exclusive use space. Regular use space will be the places where your business is involved, but so is your family. So what does that look like? Well, it could be a bedroom that the children use for napping, but your family also uses that to sleep, after the childcare closes. That's a regular use space. Your kitchen, you're preparing meals for the children, for the business, but that's your family's kitchen, right? That's a regular use space. It's shared between the business. If a couple times a week, once a week, you are holding an activity in your living room, right? So maybe we have an arts and crafts or music, and we're going to do that with some of the children in the living room. That's a regular use space, right? So when we think about time space, we have to kind of walk through our house and think about and be honest about what is 100% used for the business and what is shared between your family and home. In business and home, in many instances, there will be a larger amount of space shared between your business and your home than exclusive space. That doesn't have to be the case, but it often is. So when people measure their regular use space, don't be surprised, because remember, there's a lot of different things. If you do laundry for the children, your laundry room is regular use space. So you may find a lot more regular use space than you do exclusive use. And that's perfectly normal for businesses that are run out of the home. And I'll say childcare businesses because I'll say it again. In the United States, only childcare businesses can use business use of home. So the IRS does expect you to be doing this, but they expect you to be really, really particular about it, to think about those definitions that I gave you when you're doing the time space calculation. So first thing we do, we kind of, whether it's mentally or physically, we walk through our home and we think about the spaces that are either used 100% of the time for the business or shared with the family. So basically you will think about that. I will tell you that exclusive use spaces actually help to drive up your time space calculation. And that's why I want you to measure those nooks and crannies, that the closet that's only used for the childcare business. I want you to think about those things, because the more exclusive space you have legitimately, the higher your time space calculation ends up being. And that makes sense, right? If we have space that's used only for the business, well, we should be able to have a higher percentage there. And the way that the time space calculation works is it's a combination of the percentage of regular use and the percentage of exclusive use space. So let's start to talk about that. So basically what we want to make sure before we do the time space calculation is, please know the square feet of your home, all right? Because we have to have that before the total square feet, exclusive use and regular use, all together, all right? So we're going to take a look at that. I want you to also keep in mind that when it comes to exclusive use, as we said, exclusive use is all about space because it's being used by your business and only by your business. But when it comes to regular use, we're thinking about time and space. So when we look at the following slide that shows the different steps, you're going to see that there's a time space element for regular use space, but there's only a space element for exclusive use. And which is one of the reasons why the percentage with exclusive use, your time space percentage goes up. But let's take a look at these steps. And I don't want you to be overwhelmed by this. We are going to go through some examples. So this will certainly be very, very clear to you by the time that you're done. So what did we say first? We have to know the square feet of our home, the total square feet. We can't do anything until we know that. That may end up being on, it could be on some paperwork you have from real estate. It could be on, I don't know if property taxes break it down, but most people have at some time have the square feet of their home, and that is what you will end up using, total square feet. So we take that number and we're going to put it to the side, and we're going to use some actual examples, but let's walk through these 6 steps so you understand when I get into them what it was I was talking about. So step number 1 is all about regular use space. So you are going to measure the square feet for every space in your home that is shared between the business and your family, right? And how do we do this? We measure the length of a space and we measure the width of a space. We add that together, and that is the amount of square feet that we have in our space. All right. So we want to make sure that we are getting our square feet correct, right? We have the square feet. So that first step is we determine the square feet of regular use space. We're going to take that number and we're going to then add it all together, all the regular use space, and I want you to divide it then by that total number of square feet in your home. And again, we're going to look at some examples, right, so that this really resonates. What comes out of that is a percentage. And you're going to take that percentage and you're going to put it to the side for a moment. What did you just do? You just determined the percentage of space for your regular use space. But now we have to think about the percentage of time that space is used for the business. So what basically happens is you will figure out the amount of time across the year that you use your childcare business, or childcare business is open, or you are performing tasks for the childcare business. You're going to determine the amount of hours. You take that amount of hours and you divide it by the number of hours in a year. And that's 8,760. All right, so just keep that in mind. 8,760 is the total amount of hours in a year. So I'm going to take the hours that I added up that my childcare business is open, and the amount of and add to that, make sure I'm including all of the hours that I have cleaning up afterwards, preparing beforehand, doing tasks for the business. That all gets added together and then divided by the total number of square feet. The total number of hours in a year, right? So that number gets divided by 8,760. That gives me my second percentage. So that is the time portion of my regular use space. So I grab that percentage that I put to the side a moment ago, and I multiply that percentage, the percentage of space for my regular use, multiply that with the percentage of time for my regular use. That results in a percentage, and that is the time space percentage for regular use space. But now we have to figure out the space percentage, space for the exclusive use space. And we do the same thing that we did with the regular. We're going to add up all of the exclusive use space, and we're going to take the amount of square feet in the home, same amount of square feet that we used in that very first calculation, and divide the exclusive use space by the total number of square feet in your home. That results in a percentage. So you take that space percentage for exclusive use, and you add that percentage time space percentage you had for regular use, and that is the time space calculation. So when we break it down into these 6 steps, it really isn't difficult whatsoever. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Let's look at some exact examples. All right, here. So what did we say that first step is, right? It's all about regular use space. So we are going to measure the width and the length. And I said add, and I apologize, it's multiply. You're going to measure the length and the width of each space. You multiply those two numbers together, and that gives you the square feet of that space. And what you can do is start to keep a list, right? So regular use space, my kitchen is this size. Great. The living rooms used with children are this size. The bedrooms that are used for napping are this size. And we're going to add all of that together, regular use space. And here we have some examples, right? Anything that is used doesn't have to be used all day for the childcare. It could be used part of the day, like nap time, right? So family space that's also used for nap time, regular use space. So all of those regular use spaces, we're going to add that all together. All of that basically there, but you will have done measurements. So you're going to want somebody to help you measure the length and the width. So the length and the width of your space, multiply those two numbers together, write that down. That's the square feet for that space. We gather all those spaces together, and what do? We add them all together, and we now know the amount of square feet for our regular use space. Great. What was that next step? Well, the next step, right, is that we need to make sure that, excuse me, did they duplicate this slide here? I apologize. Oh, they are explaining this. So basically, this is just explaining about the accurate way to measure that space, right? So you're going to, those spaces, you're going to measure the longest wall in that space and extend it to the other end. You want to have your family or friends help you with this, and then fix the measuring tape to the shortest wall in that space and record that measurement again in feet. That is part of how we're determining the square feet in the home, right? So we add all of that together, and that gives us the square footage of the regular use space, right? So we have all of that there. This is little repetitive, but just to let you know, here's an example, right? So we have a space that's 12 feet long and it's 10 feet wide. So I'm going to multiply 12 times 10, 120 square feet for that space. So that's what you're going to do with all of the regular use space that you have. So you'll follow these directions for measuring those spaces, and you'll be adding them up all together, right? So we want to do that. So we've done that. We've added all our regular use space, and now we're going to take the square feet in our home, and we're going to take the regular use space and we're going to divide it by the total square feet in our home. And that is going to give us a percentage. So if we look at the example we have here, let's say that our home is 1,000 square feet for our entire home. And we've measured all of that regular space, and that's 500 square feet. Well, what are we going to do? We take the 500 square feet, we divide it by the 1,000 square feet, and that gives us, in this instance, it ends up to be 50%, because when we divide it, it's 0.50. And to get a percentage, you then multiply that number by 100, and that gives us 50%. So we're going to record that. We now know that our regular use space is 50% of our home. That's the space portion of time space for our regular use space. So we've got one thing out of the way. Have that first part done, right? That's not difficult at all. So next is we have to start to think about the amount of hours that the business is open throughout the year. All right. So we're going to be adding up all of those hours. And these are any hours devoted to the child care. So it can be the time before and after with cleaning up. If you do some laundry in the evening, if you a couple times a month do bookkeeping, you're going to record all of those hours, right? So any amount of time that's spent on the child care business, you're going to add that all together. And that may change from year to year, right? You do need to make sure that you're not including any time that you were closed for vacation. But if you were closed for vacation for 2 weeks, but during that time, perhaps you did something for the business that took 3 hours, you will still add those 3 hours to your time space, your total, I should say, total time amount spent with the business. But you would not multiply full weeks, right? Because we only did work for the business a couple of days there. So in this instance, how did we come up, how are we going to determine how many hours we were open in a year? Well, here, what we're going to do is, let's say the business is open 10 hours a day for the childcare, and our provider spends an hour before preparing and an hour after cleaning up, 12 hours a day, right? They're open 5 days a week. Now, here we have a closure for COVID. Let's say that we're closed for vacation, right? We're closed for vacation, closed for the holidays for 2 weeks. But during that time, those 2 weeks that we were closed, we spent 10 hours maintaining the childcare space, getting ready to reopen. What does that math look like? So what it is that we were open 12 hours a day, right? The 10 hours plus the hour before and the hour after. Okay. We are open 5 days a week, and we're open 50 weeks in the year because we're closed for vacation 2 weeks. And we want to add in those 10 hours that we spent maintaining the space or preparing to reopen after vacation, or doing the bookkeeping, doing the laundry. We're going to add that. So what does that mean? Throughout that year, we are working in the childcare business 3,010 hours. And you can see this is why that number can change from year to year, right? Because you could have some time where maybe you started doing some evening care. So one year you weren't, and then the next year you were doing some evening care or some weekend care. Or there was a big project that you were working on during those 2 weeks that you were closed that accumulated more hours for the childcare business. So hours per year can change. Square feet, to be honest with you, can change because maybe there's a space that was used to be only used by your family, and now it's only used to be used by your family and your business, and now it's only going to be used by the childcare, right? So even that can change from year to year, and the IRS understands that. All right, they do understand that. So now we need to think about the time portion of the regular use space, because what did we say? Regular use space has a space portion and it has a time portion. So now we need to think about that. How are we going to come up with that? So we know that we said that the home is, we are working 3,010 hours a year. Well, it turns out that in a year, whole year, there are 8,760 hours. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the 3,010 hours and we're going to divide it by the total number of hours in a year, 8,760. That gives us another percentage. So in this, what we have here, this example, once we do that division, it gave us 0.344. And to get that as a percentage, we multiply it by 100, 34.4%. We're all also very, very lucky that the calculators on our phones will allow us to calculate the percent without even have to hit to multiply it by 100, right? But we need to get this second percentage. So I have a percentage for regular use that is all about the space. And now I have the right percentage that is all about the time. So the next step is that we need to now take those two numbers, those two percentages, and we're going to multiply them together because we need to get the time-space calculation for regular use space. All right, so basically we take those two numbers and we multiply them together. Right? So what we had before is we had that our regular use space, we figured out that was 50% of our home was used for childcare and the business, and that we had 34.4% of the time that we are the time in a year is devoted to the childcare business. We multiply those two together, and in this example, that's 17.2%. All right, so now I've got 17.2%. That is the time space for regular use. So once you've done that, you've already got regular use out of the way, right? We went through the whole thing. We measured all of that regular use space. We figured out what percentage of that space is used in the home or is for business and home, what percentage of that is used. We figured out the amount of time that we devote to the business in a year, multiplied those two together, and we've taken care of regular use space. We're just going to take that percentage, we're going to put that to the side, because what happens next, right? What happens in step number 6? Step number 6 is exclusive use. And I want you to really, I mentioned this before, I want you to be really, really diligent in thinking about exclusive use space in your home. And the reason for that is exclusive use space, right? We said it's only used for the business, and the higher percentage of exclusive use space, the higher your time space calculation is going to be overall. So exclusive use space is weighed very heavily. And that's the reason that I say, please measure all of your exclusive use space. Make sure that you have everything. And you're doing it exactly the way that you recorded all of your regular use space. We're measuring the width and the length of each individual space. We're multiplying those two numbers, and that gives us the amount of square feet in that particular exclusive use space. And I do recommend that you walk through, that you have a notebook, or you can record it in the notes app on your phone or whatever you'd like. But what you want to do is be very, you want to be very specific in writing down the square feet of each of that exclusive space. No different with regular space. You're going to be writing that down. But you want to say, in this main room, I only use this for the child care. This main room was, and you write down the square feet. Oh, the closet is only used for the child care. The closet is this amount of square feet. We'll write that down. After we've recorded, we've calculated and recorded all of the square feet for exclusive use space, we're going to add that together. And now we know the amount of space, square feet in our home that are used for childcare. We've added that up, but we have to get a percentage out of that, right? Because we need to know what percentage of that exclusive use space is used for the business alone. So just like we did with regular use, we're going to take that exclusive use space that we added up all together, and we're going to divide it by the number of square feet in the home entirely. And that gives us the space portion, the space calculation for exclusive use space, right? So if we see here on the slide, right, we figure out all of the square feet, and now we need to figure out the percentage of exclusive use, right? What percentage is. And it cannot be any space that is used by your family at all. All right, so if you do have an area that the children are in all the time while they're in your childcare program, but the exercise equipment for your family is there, that is not an exclusive use space. If you had a bathroom that's shared between the children and your family, that's not an exclusive use space. So you have to be, very, very honest about, does this space have anything to do with our personal use? We want to make sure, again, that we do measure all of the exclusive use space, but we want to be very careful that we are not making a mistake and accidentally measuring regular use space as exclusive use space. So we stop and we think about that. But in this particular instance, right, it's this another percentage, super easy to do, right? So we measured all of our exclusive space, and that was 100 square feet. Okay, what do we do? Take that 100 square feet and divide it by the total square feet in our home. that gives us a percentage of the amount of space that we use exclusively for the business. And then it's as simple as taking that time space calculation for regular use space and now adding it to the the space calculation that we did for exclusive use space. So in our example here, we are going to add the two spaces together. So we add those two. So when we did the exclusive use space, that worked out to be 10%. And when we multiplied, remember we multiplied the time and the space to get the regular use, and that was 17.2%. We add those two together. That came to 27.2%. That is the amount of our time space calculation. So we've got it. We have that time space. What do we do with it? We went through all of this to get this percentage. What happens to that percentage? So on your taxes, with your taxes, there is a form called the 8829 Business Use of Home. And that form is what you use to calculate the percentage of your expenses that are shared between the business, allowable expenses shared between the business and the home. So there's a section on part 1 of the 8829 that helps you do the time space calculation. I will tell you that it does not, it seems a little odd, right? That childcare businesses are the only businesses in the United States that can use this. But the calculation on the 8829 is a little misleading. So I will tell you that top portion will not, if you use it, will not result in the same number that we just came up with here. It will give you a number that actually includes regular use and exclusive use together. What you're going to do there, the line that asks what is your time space percentage? You're going to put the time space percentage that you calculated for regular use and exclusive use. So the percentage that you came up with, you're going to record that on your 8829 Business Use of Home. You then list all of the expenses that you have for the any expense that is shared, allowable expense shared between the business and the home. And as I mentioned before, so what do those types of expenses look like? Well, my utility bill. I obviously need the lights and the electric for the children, and I need the lights and the electric for my family. That is an expense that's shared between my home and my business. You're going to record that on the 8829. Your mortgage interest, I have to drive that home. It is not your mortgage payment. It is the interest that you pay on your mortgage. You're going to put that in on this line. And keep in mind that those numbers are the annual amount. So you add up your utilities throughout the year. You add up that mortgage interest throughout the year, property taxes throughout the year, repairs that involved both the family space and the regular space and the exclusive space. We'll add all of those up and record those on the 8829. And then there's a place on the 8829 where you multiply it by the time space calculation. And that tells you the amount of expenses, all of the expenses that are shared between business and home. That number, right? And that number can be very substantial because utility bills are large and you could be doing things such as, repairs. Let's say you're repainted your entire house. Well, that's an expense that is going to go on the 8829 and it's going to get multiplied by the time space percentage. If you replaced all the windows in your house, and there are windows in the childcare area, right, that's exclusive, and there are windows in the area that's regular use, well, what you're going to be able to do is record that amount and multiply it by the time space percentage. That will give you the amount that you're going to be adding all of that together, because all of those expenses for business use of home all of those, then that gives you a total number, and that total number gets carried over to your Schedule C. Schedule C is the tax form that sole proprietors and single member LLCs use to file their taxes. It's included with your 1040. You fill out the Schedule C, and the number on line 31 is the total amount on your Schedule C. So you've included in that on the Schedule C, it's every expense that's 100% for the business. Everything, all of the supplies, all of the food, the percentage that you've calculated for your transportation costs, basically all of those, right? Advertising, if you have advertising, office supplies, licensing fees, all of that ends up on the Schedule C. And so does the number that you just calculated on the 8829. So that as well gets put on the Schedule C. And those numbers are added together, and they basically are on the profit on the Schedule C, all of your profit, all your revenues on the top, and then the middle section are all your expenses. And you basically then take all of the expenses that are completely direct and 100% for the business, and those expenses that we figured out on 8829 using time space, and we subtract all of the expenses from the profit, and that on line 31 is basically the amount that the IRS considers to be your self-pay. So if any of you are familiar with the 15.3% self-employment tax, line 31 is then multiplied by 15.3, and that results in the amount of self-employment tax that you will pay on the money that you have earned after expenses, right? Which is why getting the time space calculation is so very, very important, because we need to take the amount that we are allowed, right? Because line 31, if we're going to be paying 15.3% on taxes, we want to make sure that we've taken every allowable expense, which includes those expenses for business use of home. Sometimes we'll work with childcare providers who feel that the business use of home isn't worth all that problem. It isn't worth the time space calculation. Nothing could be further from the truth. Sometimes we have childcare providers who go to a tax preparer who doesn't ask them anything about the space that's used in their home exclusively, the space that's used regularly. They may make up a number. We don't know, but there could be some tax preparers who are not using your actual time space calculation, and they could be costing you money, because we want to have all the allowable expenses and pay the correct amount of self-employment tax, but get every allowable expense. The IRS expects that. Those are allowable expenses. So there is the importance of time space, because you are entitled to that percentage of your expenses for the expenses that are shared between your business use and your personal. Now, I have something exciting, and this link is going to be in the chat, is that there actually is a time-space worksheet. And I told you all those steps, right? I taught you the 6 steps because I want you to understand the process behind it. I want you to understand how time-space works. But if you're putting that link in the chat, this is a worksheet. What does this worksheet do? Well, I enter the total amount of square feet in my home. I've measured all of my regular use space. In this case, they talk about exclusive use first. In our example, we talked about exclusive use as the last thing. But here, how much space do you use exclusively for your childcare? We put a number in there. It does the calculation for us. Boom, it's showing us what that calculation is. Next, it allows us, so that is the space calculation for our exclusive use space. Then it asks us about the amount of space that we regularly use. We throw that number in there. They ask about How many hours do you use in a year for the childcare business? You put that number in there. It makes that time space calculation for regular use space. And then it adds those two percentages together. So everything that we just talked about, all those 6 steps, can be automatically calculated for you on the time space worksheet. All right, very, very easy to use. But I do want you to understand all of those steps, right? That's why we went through all of those steps, because once you know the process behind it, it resonates. It makes sense. It basically allows you to think in terms of making sure that you are measuring all of the correct space. And then feel free to use the calculator. What I would suggest is do everything manually, those 6 steps, because this recording is going to be posted on the Civitas Strategies YouTube channel, and you'll be able to, which we will put the link for that in the chat, and you will be able to view this video and look at those 6 steps, right? Do that, and then go to the time space calculator and put that in there and look for the match, right? Because you're going to have it right. You're going to have done the calculation correctly because you followed those 6 steps. And that worksheet is doing it for you as well, that calculator sheet. So, what we went through today, right, is understanding the importance of time space, right? Why it is so important for your taxes. You now know the difference between exclusive use space and regular use space, and you know your time space percentage. And you're going to keep in mind that that could potentially change from year to year based on the different types of space that are, the amount of space that you use, whether exclusive use could change, regular use could change, or the amount of hours that you are devoting to the childcare business can change. So, having said that, I wonder if we have any questions. Annie, do we have any questions in the chat?
We got a question asking if the meeting is being recorded.
So the meeting is being recorded, and it will be on the Civitas Strategies YouTube site. I'll show that address in a moment. However, it is also going to be in the chat. So Civitas Strategies, the company that we work for, the Provider Services Fund, has invited us here today. There's a YouTube channel for Civitas Strategies where this information, this video, is going to be posted, and you'll be able to go and watch that. So, do we have any other questions? Someone can come off mute if they would like, if they have a tricky space that they've always wondered about, because sometimes things come up. And if you don't have any questions, I'll give you a couple of examples that come up repeatedly when we do.
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry.
Hi, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Sarah. I assist, supervise the providers who's taking care of the child business. I also support in the finance bookkeeping.
Oh,
So
okay.
my question is that regarding time, the hour that we use for the business, is this hour including those hours which we use for the process of opening or getting the license, like training or that? Is this can be part of this calculation? I'm just wondering.
So Sarah, any time that is spent for business operations is included in those hours that you add up for the year.
Thank you.
Yep. So you want to make sure that you count those hours, right? So what does that mean throughout the year? You're going to record those things, because when you do the time space calculation for that year, you want to include all of those hours.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome, Sarah. Do we have any other questions?
I have some Spanish speaking questions. Can you hear me in the English channel?
I'll
Hello?
put some things out there for you that come up.
I can hear you, Emily.
You can hear me? Okay, I'd like to present those. Juana is asking a couple of questions. She says, I am understanding that the 15.3% that I'm going to pay is on everything that I made, or only on the gains I made minus the cost that I had. So the income minus the cost. For the 15.3%, that's her first question.
I'm just going to translate that really quickly. Jen, the first question is from Juana asking if the 15.3% is for everything or everything minus the gains.
Everything minus the, I'm sorry.
The gains, Emily, was that the question?
Yeah, the
I
question
don't
is, I am understanding that the 15.3%, which would be the self-employment tax that I would pay, is on everything that I make or everything that I make minus my costs.
Okay. The question is the 15.3% on everything that a provider makes or everything minus the
Oh.
cost?
I thought we were talking about I apologize. I thought we were talking about the time space. So 15.3%, the self-employment tax is after you've taken the expenses off of your revenue, right? So you add up you have to account for every way that you receive money, right? That you receive revenue. That includes cash payments, grants, money that you receive from the CACFP. We add all the revenue together. We deduct all the expenses, including the expenses for business use of home. Line 31, once we've done that, once we've subtracted the expenses from the revenue, line 31 is where that 15.3% is calculated.
And the following question from Juana is, do you have legal help, or do you have some kind of consultation in order for, I think it's not legal help, do you have help for consulting or for doing the taxes?
Do we
Do you
have
guys,
help
do you
for
offer that? Do you
consulting
offer
or doing the taxes? Do we offer that type of assistance?
So we, as Civitas Strategies, does offer that through clients. So clients will hire Civitas Strategies to basically teach people. We do not do tax preparation, but we do tax education. However, what's exciting is, Aaron, if you don't mind, I don't know if you've put in the chat already, in the very beginning of January, Provider Services Fund is holding a tax preparation, basically getting ready for tax season, getting ready to prepare your taxes, holding a webinar, same time that it was today. And I apologize, did Aaron put that in the chat? Okay,
Yep.
Great. So take a look there because there's a link to register for Zoom. So does Civitas Strategies, do we often end up educating? We're not tax preparers, we're not tax professionals. Do we end up educating? We do, but that organizations basically engage us to work with their providers. So we don't have anything that we directly work with providers. However, Civitas Strategies is, we are the stewards of Tom Copeland's blog. So if you are familiar with Tom Copeland, and the link has been put in the chat, we now are the individuals who maintain and update TomCopelandblog.com. And there are a ton of resources available on Tom Copeland's blog. There are also, on Tom's blog, there is something that's called Ask the Experts. I'm just going to switch over to Spanish so our Spanish-speaking providers can see this as well. Ask the Experts is a section on the blog where you can send us questions, and then once a month, I answer those questions, and we record and post a video so that I add all the questions up together and I record the video. Aaron or Annie, if you don't mind, could you put in civstrat.com in the chat? So our main website, if you go to civstrat.com, at the top of the website, there is actually a little banner. If you click on that, it has all of the Civitas Strategies tax resources. So that's another resource that you could have for your taxes. So please attend the webinar in January, which actually has time space. I'll be totally honest with you. It does show time space again because time space is a huge part of taxes, but has a lot of other information for you. So, you have any other questions?
We do. Someone asked, I missed the beginning of the meeting. How do I get my childcare business set up? And then can I still file these deductions even though I don't currently have an EIN?
So So I'm not sure in terms of the beginning of how you start up the business. So that isn't something that we talked about today, or you will be able to view the recording, right? So you can see what it is that you missed. As far as the expenses for your childcare business, you can file the Schedule C using your Social Security number. You don't have to have an EIN to claim those expenses.
And it's just a kind of a repeat question. Is there an organization that can help with getting taxes done correctly?
Yeah, it's really, really tough, right, to find a tax preparer that is experienced in childcare. So my suggestion is reach out to the childcare community in which you live and work in, asking, does anybody have a really good childcare tax preparer? And share, people are willing to share that. Post it on your local Facebook group. Does anyone know of a tax preparer experienced in childcare taxes? And do that. Please attend the January webinar, because we talk about skills and things that you can go to a tax preparer and you'll be informed and you'll feel empowered and you'll have answers to some of the questions when you go there. But it's always a good idea to check with other childcare businesses as to who they're using.
That's all.
That's it. Well, I'm going to throw out two questions that people ask me all the time. All right. If I have an attached deck attached to my house, can I use that in the time-space calculation? The answer is yes, if the children are playing, if you're using the deck for the children, but you'll need to take the square feet of that deck and add them to the square feet of your house, right? So that's one of the questions that everybody asks me. If it is a detached patio, that is not included. It needs to be attached to the home. People also always ask me about their yard, right? You have playground space and things like that. While the expenses in that space are allowable, or if they are allowable, you cannot measure your yard and include that in your time-space calculation. So those are the two most often asked questions about time-space. So if we have a playground, we're going to be able to expense the playground equipment, but we are not going to be able to measure the fence in that space or that space at all for time-space. Just throwing that out there because those are the two most popular questions. So, well, with that, we are at time. I wish everyone a very happy holiday season. I'm so appreciative that you joined us here today. Please do visit these resources. This is the Civitas Strategies YouTube channel where this video will be posted, but we have 600 other videos there, so, or over 600. They're available in English and in Spanish. So there are a lot of resources there. And what I should have said is that I apologize, the time-space calculator, the English is at the top, but you scroll down and it's entirely in Spanish. If we have nothing else, then we're going to say goodnight. I want to thank Emily, our interpreter, my coworkers, Annie and Aaron, for helping me. And we hope we see you in January at our next webinar. Thanks so much. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.